Good morning and welcome to Deep Dives with New Perspectives. I'm Michael Bartlett with Merrylin, LeBlanc. How are you today, Merrylin?
I'm great, Michael, and doing very well, et cetera, and very excited about our chat today. Last week we talked about Mars in Cancer, and I remember near the end of that chat saying, I wished I had looked at this book that I have where two astrologers, Wendell Perry and Linda Perry, um, well, the book title of the book is The Mars Venus Affair, which is actually, if I, I'd seen that when it came out, and I forget how many, it's been many years since this has been out. And when it first came out, I didn't even, bother to look at whatever. But I was in a discount bookstore one day, and this was there for $6. Now, here's a picture of the book, and I mean, it's not, it's a pretty hefty book. So I flipped through it for $6. I flipped through it and I thought, I've got to buy this. Because what they did was they chose two people fairly well known and, in either literature, politics, any field that they could find, where they could get biographies or autobiographies or diaries that revealed a lot about these individuals' sexual life. And so they had this brief little, I call it maybe an essay, it's a page long. And then they name another person who also has that combination, but they don't go into it. So anyway, after our chat last week, I did look at who has Cancer, Mars in Cancer, and Venus in Taurus, where Venus still is, but she's soon to go into the next sign, into Gemini. And they gave Jean Cocteau, and they wrote about his sexual life. And as an addition, they mentioned Wilhelm Reich. And I thought, oh my God, these are two people we need to talk about. We need to talk about their sexual lives and what it tells. So this is, I mean, extremely interesting in terms of going deeper into the sign of Cancer as well as the sign of Taurus. I mean, Cancer is that sign, that we often just think about family, but it's also the beginning of our individuality. And how we began was, of course, being conceived by our mothers, inseminated by their partners, etc. And these two men had interesting sexual lives, but even going beyond that. And so, do you want to talk about one at a time or go back and forth?
I'd say let's go talk one at a time. I personally don't know as much about Jean Cocteau, so I'm going to let you take the lead on this one because I'm just not as familiar with. I know of him, but Reich, it's interestingly enough. I mean, he's the basis of the core energetics work that I did. I mean, I'm basically two generations from learning from him, so I mean, I'm very familiar with his work. I mean, EMDR, all the somatization, the understanding that the body holds so many things. I mean, it's going to be very exciting talking about him, but. Let's start out with Jean.
Oh, yeah. Jean Cocteau, of course, we have a theater here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, named after him. He was an artist of sorts, wrote poetry, literary guy, known for his homosexuality. Not that he did not have sex with women as well. When you read the biography that they wrote in the Mars Venus Affair book, there was both. One of the things that the Perrys say about this combination of Cancer and Taurus, Mars and Cancer, Venus and Taurus, is that they are lazy sentimentalists. Now, I wouldn't think of either of these men as lazy. So, this is this thing in astrology where you can go into a field and come up with different archetypes and different adjectives to describe those archetypes if you think of the sentimentalist as an archetype, perhaps, someone who is remembers things from the past. And actually, both of these men do have some of that quality, because, like Jean Cocteau, throughout his life, had many partners, and he was very loyal to them. And my impression in reading their short biography of his sexual life um, made me feel a sense that anybody or many people that he had sex with became part of his family in a universal sense of family. He truly seemed, I don't know, I haven't really read anything else about him, to care about his partners. And um, the Mars at the degree of the ninth degree of Cancer, it's symbolized by a small naked girl groping in a pond for a fish. So there's kind of this search with him for life and a deeper understanding of what life is about. And I got that sense when, they would describe one of his partners whom he did have sex with. He would go in and out sometimes with the same person, but he had a reputation for being homosexual and not monogamous, in that sense. And that's another common factor between these two men that we're talking about, is that neither of them were truly monogamous. So they were, there's this kind of sense when you think of family, you don't think of one person, like I'm single, I live alone. I don't think of myself as family. When the word family comes up, I think of my biological family. And I also think about the many people in my life who I consider as family, but not as a single person. Even though the sign of Cancer is very much about our individuality. And, as a member of a family, we have many relationships where we're able to express our individuality. And in these two men, when it was the field of sex, that was revelatory to them about um, about their individuality and what was important for everybody. Because in the family unit and in psychology, no matter what system you're using, the family unit is the beginning of our psychosis, the the psychological makeup that we have, how we deal with life and with other people. It comes from that source. um, so it'd be interesting to see contemporary figures who, and not well-known figures, individuals. Now, when I have to go through my charts, which I haven't done, of individuals that I know and that whose charts I've given consultations on, and find if there's any Cancer um, Mars is there, and how that played out in their life. None come to mind. Not that I would talk about them, or at least not identify them. Um, but yeah, so there's this kind of thing. Well, the thing about Mars too, besides being about one's sexuality, is also it's what moves us. So there's other factors when we're talking about motivation, not just Mars, but Mars is one of the principles that describes what motivates us. Motivation implying we take action on it, we go towards it. And 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 so both of these men are in some way moved by a sense of family, a sense of togetherness, and a sense of nurturing other other members of the family as well as themselves, nurturing their individuality. And with Cocteau, there were definitely situations that were described in this book, um, where you knew that they didn't always have sex with this individual, but there was some kind of deep caring and concern about this individual's life. I mean, there was one situation where they referred to the person as, somebody in the literary circle, and Cocteau evidently thinking this person has talent that should be nurtured. So there was this kind of interaction going on as well.
Well, you see all of these elements in the chart. I mean, first of all, you see such a huge, very subjective individual. Everything's below the horizon, and mainly even, especially the personal planets are all here in the first quarter. Having Venus is the maverick Venus, Venus conjunct the ascendant, ruling Taurus. Relationships is going to be so crucial. And you even said it's like, being able to perceive the value of people, being able to perceive the quality of someone, I think is really highlighted with this point. And, he shares something with you and I. He has a Scorpio moon, a very late degree Scorpio moon like myself, but nonetheless still a Scorpio moon. So he's got this Scorpio moon. He's got that
Wait a
being
minute.
fed.
He's not a that's not a Scorpio moon.
Yes, it is.
He's got a
Oh, sorry, Virgo. Sorry. Yeah, Virgo
Virgo.
moon. Sorry, you're right. Thank you. I get all excited when I think there's a Scorpio moon involved.
I
But
know
Virgo
Scorpio's up
moon,
here in the 6th house, and there's nothing in it
right,
other than his descendant.
right. So it just gives him this wonderful, that Virgo moon gives him that wonderful container, right? And that kind of being able to hold that detail. And it's feeding into that, it's supporting this Mars, Sun, and North Node. I mean, his drive is to be kind of a force, to basically, whenever I see Mars like this with the Sun, in the North Node in a sign like Cancer, it's a cardinal sign. He's here to kind of fructify, with that Taurus Venus, that's, I think it was a Taurus thing really, but with that Mars in Cancer, it's like go forth and propagate, go forth and enjoy thyself. It's
Well,
kind of
right,
hedonistic in a way,
exactly.
right?
Giving us a very strong example of somebody who is definitely individualistic.
Has to
And-
be, because
yeah.
he's doing something for the collective with that Venus and Taurus, as well as that Mars Sun North Node. I mean, these are collective points. To be
Yes.
seen, and then Gemini ruling, Mercury ruling Gemini, and then that going over and support that Uranus in Libra. That I want to have a lot of different experiences, and I want to be creative in as many possible ways as I can, being focused in a sense on right human relationship, right? Because like what you said is like his relationships were really crucial. So I think, that Uranus, Venus, he liked the new, right? But then the new became his what he became loyal to and what he appreciated and what he honored with that Venus on the ascendant.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And he honored himself. Totally honored himself. And
Valued
yet
himself, right? I mean, that's a Venus Taurus on the ascendant, that value yourself.
right. And his Mars, is a ruler of that 12th house where inspiration comes from. So part of his talent to be with others, to write poetry, and he even did some filmmaking. I forget the name of it. It's a well-known film. Was it Dracula? No. It's a pretty well-known storyline. But all of that is just so fertile in this chart.
Neptune, Pluto conjunct in Gemini, right? I mean, he gets his dream. I mean, it's like literally, I mean, I'm sure that like people inspired him. His interactions with others is what continually inspired him. And, the images he would get, and, with that Venus is really kind of in a close enough relationship. I'd give that a conjunction too, so, he loved beauty. He loved the transformatively dreamy nature of other individuals. That's what I would say with that Neptune Pluto conjunction in Gemini. And
Definitely. And of
Mercury
course,
there too.
right. Mercury channeling. I mean, many artists, no matter what their genres, have strong Gemini energy coming through. And not only just the motivation, but I think his sexuality and the partners. I mean, he was very much a member the literary and artistic community of Paris. And yeah, all of that kind of feeds into uh, what he was able to produce and offer to humanity. Yeah.
And it's so neat to see this. And I don't know if you've paid much attention to it. I know Alex Trenoweth has done a little bit of work on it. But what's very interesting with individuals who have passed on is we in our regular day-to-day lives, we don't think about the chart kind of like living on after a person passes away. But what's very interesting is as especially outer planets or certain planets within this chart return to their original position, you will find that there's like these resurgences of energy around the individual, which is always very exciting. There might be a new movie about the individual or a new book comes out or something like that, but it's fascinating how the natal chart continues to live on in spite of the physical body no longer being with us.
Well, it's interesting as I listened to Democracy Now! This morning, and they interviewed a filmmaker. Don't ask me the name, but I need to go back and read the transcript because they're talking about racism,
Mm.
and this black filmmaker who's was born in Haiti and lived in Africa. He's universal, and he's done other things like. Uh, but in any event, what his latest work is about goes back to the 1100s and 1200s, 12th and 13th century.
Crusades.
And that was the last time we had Jupiter and Saturn in air signs. And I'm going, what is happening now on the racial plane? And, lots, and we're going off the topic. It is reflecting something that was going on in astrologically, it shows up back. And that's why I want to go back and really get into it. I mean, I was, in the dream awake state listening to Democracy Now! At 6 a.m. in the morning. So I don't always anchor it in myself. But back to Jean Cocteau, yes. Some of his contributions get triggered as transits go through some of the signs, some of the areas of his chart, very much so.
And his highest planet is at Jupiter and Capricorn. I mean, by a long shot. I mean, so a certain level of it falls in his eighth house with Placidus system.
Right. And also with Coke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. See, for whole sign, I would put this in the ninth house, which then would be that pursuit for that higher philosophy, which is what I really see with them. But even with Jupiter and Capricorn in the eighth house, that he's really had a destiny to be seen, right, and to be kind of larger than life and to be a success,
and also to be seen through the lens of being promiscuous, perhaps, in his sexuality as well.
And this is kind of interesting. I like how you say it because it's like, anyone looking at this go, but what do you mean it's Jupiter and Capricorn? But we have to remember that underneath that with it being the eighth house, that's Scorpio's house. And just like that, there are many people who know about Jean Cocteau and know about all these things that people know about him. But then with every eighth house, with every Scorpionic complex, there's the other story.
Yes. Yes.
And speaking of another story,
let's go to Wilhelm.
Wilhelm.
Yes.
So excited by being able to talk about him and what a force of nature. I mean, he is it okay if I do a little story talk on him?
Sure. Yes, that's why I'm quiet right now.
Okay, good. Oh, okay.
Jump in, and I will.
Good, please do. So Wilhelm Reich was one of the he was a student of Freud and Jung, a contemporary of Jung. But he went off on a whole different tangent than these two individuals did. For him, and I'm getting goosebumps as I talk about this, his thing is really about the understanding of the somatization, or the ways in which we make our traumas growing up in our life physical in our bodies. And so he began to understand this arrangement about how the body is done, how the energy goes up and down, and we create these blocks that go perpendicularly. One segment of his work, one whole body of his work that's been taken completely out of I won't say out of context, but placed and made into its own art form is EMDR. It's just the ocular area, the understanding that in the balancing visually of the corpus callosum with the left through the corpus callosum for the left and right hemispheres, there's a balancing and a neutralizing of trauma. In addition, he had a bit of a God complex. I mean, hello, Aquarius rising. We're not really quite sure of his time, but this works really well. I would actually say he must have fixed ascendant, descendant, because he's very either Taurian or Aquarian in the way he goes about things, maybe even Leonine in his ascendant, because he knew. And the hard part when people are very intelligent, hello, Aquarius or Aquarius rising, is that they very easily intimidate and or irritate others. He came up with this wonderful, interesting idea of capturing an energy that exists in the universe or on our planet called orgone. And he made a machine called the orgone machine. Some of you may know it as what's called a cloud busting machine. He, along with Tesla, go ahead.
By the way, I have an orgone blanket.
Really?
I made it based on some of his writings that he talked about.
Oh, I'm going to talk to you about that later. That's very exciting.
Yes, okay.
So one of the selling points about orgone machine is it's this idea that it's a box that creates a concentration of orgone energy. Orgone is like orgasm energy in a sense. There's this like pure life force aspect to it. But what he found is that when he worked with people with the orgone machine, he could cure them of cancer and other things. So very, very fascinating. Go ahead.
Right. Well, that word orgone evidently was derived from orgasm and I believe organic.
Probably,
He put the two together, which I think is fascinating in and of itself.
And it's so funny because like as we're talking about this, I think, okay, Aquarius rising, I mean, look at the Saturn and Uranus conjunct at last degree of Scorpio for Uranus. I got it right this time. And early degree of Saturn, Sagittarius. That combination is very Aquarian. I mean, he really had an understanding, just like Tesla. Some of the other, there are these times in the world when these certain individuals come forward and they just basically advance humanity. And Reich was one of them. Unfortunately, with that Aquarian nature, with his, here's Pluto, here's this Pluto-Neptune conjunction we were talking about earlier too in Gemini, just like Cocteau had. And then of course that Mars in early Cancer, which is what we're at right now. He wanted to be able to basically do his own thing. And what eventually happened, and where the government typically gets individuals who have these levels of intelligence, is he was making his orgone machine. And as long as he's selling it in his own state, it's okay. But once you start selling a medical device outside of state, it becomes federal. And so the government got involved. They incarcerated him. Kate Bush has a beautiful, beautiful song about it, video done with Donald Sutherland playing Reich, all about her daddy being taken away. That's Anna Reich, by the way, who's also a famous therapist in her own right. He ended up dying in jail, in prison of maybe questionable causes. I mean, here's this Uranus, right there at the last degree of Scorpio. A surprising end, so to speak. Not really what I'm sure he expected to do. But his work is just really incredible. And it's like, this somatization, this understanding, this search for a higher knowledge, Sagittarius midheaven with his moon there, that ever seeking emotional nature of trying to find out what is right.
You know what, also in terms of, he's dying in prison for some interstate violation kind of issue. One of the things they also tried to do was burn all his books.
Right.
And thanks to people who had those books, they've been republished and are available. But this is one example of, our country's violation of individuals' rights and ideas. This is a good example of how, and I won't use the F word, but how messed up the United States is, psychologically speaking.
Right. The idea is, the sense of like what the freedom is. But I remember hearing, but I have not seen anything, but supposedly he he and or his daughter were able to put away a series of manuscripts that were supposed to be released around 50 years after his death, which I want to say sometime was around 2000 or 2010. I haven't heard anything about it, but I know that there is more. Some of these people who are so prolific. I mean, here, he's got that similar thing with Jean Cocteau, Venus in Taurus, a deep, you know, a, people with Venus and Taurus, they need to feel, they need to touch, they need to experience. Here's this sun in Aries that probably gave him that, relative fearlessness, which was trining that sun in Gemini. I mean, sun in Sagittarius, kind of like a warrior energy, right? A little kind of, I usually kind of say maybe Christian warrior, but I mean, I don't think, I think well, he's Judeo-Christian, but
he was born Jewish, but I believe his parents did not want to be identified as Jewish, so he was forbidden to speak Yiddish. They had to speak German only. He was born in what is now the Ukraine. It was Austria-Hungary, I think, at the time, right. Where he was born. But right. Yeah, interesting combinations of things. Matter of fact, that I'd like to make a comment about his Venus and Mars. I mean, even as a child, he was obsessed to a certain degree, and maybe we all are, I don't know. That's a whole other topic in a way, but with sexuality and having orgasms, and had sex with one of the live-in tutors, I believe.
Right.
And also, without thinking, his mother at one point was having an affair with one of his live-in tutors, and he inadvertently told his father about it, and his father, started beating his mother on a regular basis. And I believe, I think she committed suicide, or, died basically not too far after that. But it was like these, he had, and he writes about the obsessions that he had about having orgasms and having sex as a child and stuff. And that fed a lot into his work in psychiatry, in terms of recognizing that our Anglo-Saxon Puritan ethic has really restricted a lot of our humanity, and that we ought to look at sex in a more naturalistic, normal framework. That's simplified.
I mean, as you say that, I just totally see this axis of the moon in Sagittarius opposing Pluto, Neptune, and Gemini. He couldn't help but tell the truth. And also, couldn't help. I mean, sometimes I see some of these combinations for people who are a little bit of like tuning forks. They can't help but express what is going on in the environment. Plus, I don't know about you, but whenever I see Pluto in the fourth house, I find that there tends to be either a significant death or really torturous emotional experiences, typically within
Indeed, there was.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to witness that is something, unfortunately, that trains so many people for so many years, and also completely traumatize them, is to see one parent beat the other parent in front of the children. That's something no child should, I mean, no parent should ever endure that, for one, but no child should ever have to witness that. What that creates on a level, but a good book, I don't know, is Fury on Earth. It's written by Myron Shroff. I mean, there's a little bit of controversy about him. He befriended Reich and learned a lot and took a lot of stuff with him, but very interesting story.
And he wrote about, he wrote about Reich,
right,
in that book.
It's a biography.
Oh, okay. I don't have that one. I have several of Wilhelm Reich's books that he wrote himself, but not.
Yeah, he's very fascinating man. I mean, what he came away with and understood. I mean, also, look at, I didn't even realize that here's the North Node conjunct his. Well, actually, we don't know what time, but I think this would really help support North Node.
This was what do we call this? A rectified chart by another person. And what I believe drew us both to it was the fact that he was such an unusual character in the emerging field of psychiatry. And after a while, because even though at the beginning Freud took him in, and encouraged him and was fascinated by his thoughts, etc., he kind of got ostracized in Germany, and then there was Nazi Germany,
Well, I
and
mean, you have to
and
understand too
he
with
left.
Freud that
Yeah.
Freud only wanted people who would reflect back to him what he wanted to see,
Oh yeah.
which is
Well,
the split with Jung and the split with Reich were exactly for their own reasons because they came forward with their own ideas. And Freud, unfortunately, really had no capacity. I mean, he was a sun in Taurus, right? So he had his own dogma going on. Like he didn't really want to pay attention to what anyone else was saying.
whereas Reich's sun is in the in Aries, and so he's got his own mind made up, and he's not going to uh, succumb to somebody's views that don't make sense to him or that don't seem to really address the problems.
There's
He
nothing in his chart that supports him falling along with anyone else, except for that Mercury in Pisces, which allows him, I think, allowed him a little bit to kind of touch into the collective. I always find Mercury in Pisces to be a very, intuitive, insightful weather vane, so to speak, of understanding. And so, but everything else, like you said, I agree with you. I mean, this is a chart of individuation.
Right. Well, the thing too about the Mercury in Pisces being in its fall and that, or detriment in that sign, the detriment comes, and it's in the chart that I have. It's in his second house, uh, and it's sort of like the personal value that he had to offer uh, was not listened to by his colleagues in the field to any great extent, and it was I hadn't even heard of him. I was into Jung's stuff, and then all of a sudden I don't remember even how, stumbled upon him and started and I'm going like, whoa, this guy has some really important information to take in. And especially, getting back to Mars, especially about sexuality. And as Mars is at the very first degree of Cancer, it's sort of like this is a degree that has to do with a decisive break from the past. And he definitely, in his thinking about the psyche of a human, was definitely breaking away from the mainstream of people in that field. And in some ways, that breaking away is a clean break. Don't go back. Don't, sometimes but he had this very clean break, and went off to America and had to, you don't hear about him from the Europeans. Maybe some of them have written about him. I mean, I haven't studied this extensively, but he's definitely in the realm of Tesla in terms of the scientific world, and in terms of advancing ideas, and so I don't think we've heard the last about him and his ideas. And what we're having with this going back to the Jupiter Saturn cycle beginning in air signs and in Aquarius, no less. What's happening now in terms of sexual preferences and sexual expression is reflective of some of Reich's work, in terms of, it's all right for people to be unique and different about how they approach, say, the question of gender or the question of sex. It, for I mean, obviously, it's not totally all right, because we still have people who have not opened their minds to, why is this bothering me? This, why are these concepts disturbing to me? Well, to me, that's a signal that they're stuck. They're not evolving. They're stuck.
And as we know, one of the Aquarian archetypes is not to really be appreciated in one's lifetime. So I mean, and not to be appreciated, to be the outcast, to be, to not be seen by either one's family, one's
Yeah.
organization or one's colleagues. And, so,
Well, yeah.
what's really nice, I mean, here's this Mars with a dead on inconjunct to that Saturn. It's an inconjunct to that Uranus. I mean, he really had to, get off the pot and make stuff happen in his life, and it really, he really didn't have a choice, and
Exactly.
again,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, just like Cocteau, it's a Venus in Taurus. His Venus is at a different degree, but it also has some similar imagery. I mentioned with Cocteau that there was the imagery of and this was really for his Mars, a naked girl groping in a fish pond. Well, the imagery for Reich's Venus is shellfish groping and playing on the sand, and that imagery reflects how he was attracted to the collective mind, to our consciousness, our whole consciousness. I mean, it's shellfish are of course like Cancerian, I mean, like the crab, but they're also, playing with water, kind of dipping into the unconscious. And, so it's like taking the conscious and going with it deeper into the unconscious mind, which I find with both men, expressing itself differently, which is a beautiful example of how the simplicity of astrology. I know some people might think I'm crazy calling it simple, but it is yet, tapping into the universe that we live in with metaphors,
Yeah. And both of these gentlemen worked in the realm of metaphors to help us understand ourselves in a much more important way. I think, thank you for this talk. It's really been very exciting and enlightening with it. And it's a nice kind of build on for our previous one. Let me see if we got that and that. So how do
Yeah.
people find you?
Right there, moonwiseastrology.com. And it's all one word, of course, and it's somewhere in that title. That's my website. And also this information is on that website as well. My email is Merrylin LeBlanc at gmail.com. Phone number 505-690-1878. And of course, I do a show called Moonwise at ksfr.org, 101.1 FM here in Santa Fe. And there's podcasts on that website as well. And there's links to that website on moonwiseastrology.com.
Yay, so wonderful. And thank you. And if you want to reach me, they can reach me at coremichael.com or michael@coremichael.com, or my phone number 505-690-3860. If you like our show, hit the like button, hit subscribe, share with your friends, ask us questions. We're here to share our interesting views on astrology and hope you guys enjoy them. Thank you so much for a wonderful day, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.